December 22nd. And this shall be a sign unto you. Ye shall find the babe wrapped in swaddling clothes, lying in a manger. And suddenly there was with the angel a multitude of heavenly hosts, praising God and saying, Glory to God in the highest, and on earth peace, goodwill toward men. The magic stockings. When I bought them to decorate my shop window, I thought the Christmas stockings were very ordinary. Little did I dream they would change the holiday for me, my coworkers, and 6 little children. By Ramona Anderson. Who would have guessed there was anything at all special about those Christmas stockings? I certainly didn't. In fact, the first time I saw them in the store, I thought they were so ordinary I was tempted not to purchase them. But I did buy 6 because I thought their bright red and green colors would add some festivity to the print shop where I worked. I hoped, too, that they would add some Christmas spirit. We all certainly needed it. Along with most Americans that year, my coworkers were depressed by the economic recession and the final agonies of Watergate, and my friends all seemed enmeshed in their problems. Everyone I knew was moving in a world dominated by selfish concerns. The joy that usually marked the holiday season was missing. In place of good spirits, there was just emptiness. The emptiness extended to my personal Christmas plans. For the first time, Santa would find no stockings to fill at our house. Those 2 boys who bubbled with excitement during past holidays were grown up now. The true joy of Christmas was just a memory. Hanging stockings in the print shop window was a last-minute idea. The bookkeeper and I hung them just 2 days before Christmas. The color did give the room a lift, but after a ripple of half-hearted banter about our dim prospects of a visit from St. Nick, everyone fell to work, as dispirited as before. Later, though, I noticed someone had slipped a tiny gift into each stocking. The bookkeeper smiled when I shot her a questioning look, planning to do some Christmas elf work myself during lunch hour. I returned her smile. I hurried out at noon and was back well ahead of the others. As I tucked my purchases into the narrow stockings, I became aware of eyes watching me through the windows. I didn't recognize the 3 children who stood on the sidewalk, but smiling at them, I waved a greeting. In a flash, they were through the door and inside. "What you doing?" asked one. "Oh, I'm helping Santa Claus a little," I replied, winking at the tallest girl. "Is he here?" asked her younger sister. Her round eyes searched the room excitedly. "No, not yet," I answered. "I'm just getting some things ready for when he does come. Helping him out, you know. He's so busy." "When's Santa Claus coming?" asked the 3rd youngster. Serious brown eyes studied me over a freckled nose. For a moment, I wondered if I'd heard him right. Could there be a child anywhere in the world who was anxiously counting the hours until Santa's arrival tomorrow night? I took a closer look at the 3, measuring the scantiness of their clothing against the cold outside. The boy and his older sister wore lightweight jackets. The little girl's coat was heavier but worn. It sagged unevenly halfway to her ankles. A coldness settled in my middle, but I managed a light reply. "Why, tomorrow night, of course." Then, as if in an afterthought, I asked, "By the way, what are your names? I don't believe I've seen you around before." The older girl answered, "We moved here last week. Our name is Kelly." She said her name was Karen and that she was 11 years old. Her little sister, Peggy, was 6. Bob, of the brown eyes and freckled nose, was 9. And at home were 10-year-old Jimmy, 7-year-old Lila, and 3-year-old Jake. "Where do you live?" I asked. Karen pointed in a southerly direction. "Down there, across the street from the gas station." I knew the house. It had stood empty and neglected for years. "We got our lights turned on this morning," offered Bob with the air of one announcing a momentous event. In the same breath, he added, "Daddy went to work today, too." Then Peggy, her eyes fixed on the small, artificial tree on the counter beside me, said in a wistful voice, "We don't have a Christmas tree." I felt a tug around my heart. I looked at Karen. "Oh, surely," I began, falling silent at the expression in her dark eyes. "Mama said we couldn't have any Christmas this year," she said. "Daddy hasn't got any money." The sadness in her voice triggered a lump in my throat. I felt an impulse to gather the children close and tell them they would have a Christmas. Instead, muttering something about how busy I was, I said I'd tell Santa about their problem if he came by, then dismissed them with as cheery a goodbye as I could muster. What can I possibly do? I wondered. Tomorrow is Christmas Eve. So little time. guests tomorrow night for dinner. What can I possibly do about these children?" "What was that all about?" My boss's voice interrupted my thoughts. I told him the story, then asked, "What do you think? Do you suppose they're really not going to have a Christmas at all?" "Well, I wonder," he said. "You said they'd just gotten their electricity turned on. Why don't you call the power plant and see what they know about the family?" When I cradled the receiver minutes later, my questions had been answered. The Kellys were destitute. Only through the generosity of others had it been possible for them to have heat and electricity in the little house. There certainly would be no Christmas for the children. Unless... By the time each of my coworkers had heard the story, there was no doubt that Santa would visit the Kelly children. We'd see to it. My boss reached for his wallet. "Here," he said, taking out a bill. "Start with this." "I was planning to put homemade candy into all our stockings tomorrow," the printer said. "Why don't I wrap it up for their kids instead?" The typesetter chimed in. "I've got several new games I bought for the grandkids to play with. They don't need them as much as the Kelly children." 2 more bills went into the fund. Then the bookkeeper said, "Wouldn't it be great if Santa could deliver the gifts?" We all agreed it was a great idea, but who could we get on such short notice? Someone suggested the name of a tall, round fellow who was always brimming with laughter. Yes, he would be ideal. But would he be willing to take time from his own small children on Christmas Eve? I had my doubts as I dialed his number. "I'll do it," the man responded without hesitation. "You find me the costume and bring everything to my house tomorrow afternoon. I'll deliver your presents." When I relayed the good news to my companions, smiles popped around the room. The last wisp of gloom disintegrated. We turned to the office work with fresh vigor, anxious to get it out of the way so we could begin Operation Santa Claus. Did I imagine it? Or did the stockings in the window suddenly look brighter? Through them, we had found a way to bring joy to others, and we were receiving joy in return. Those are very special stockings, I thought. Magic stockings? Word of our project spread. By 5 o'clock, we had received several offers of help, as well as more gifts and more cash. Delegated to do the shopping, I hurried into the gathering December dusk. What fun it was choosing a new outfit for Karen. A clerk helped me choose just the right dolls for Karen's younger sisters. For the older boys, I selected challenging games, and for the toddler, a sturdy truck. It was past 7 when I nosed my car towards my home. I was exhausted, but for the first time in weeks of preparation, I actually looked forward to Christmas. Imagining the look on the children's faces when Santa stepped into their house on Christmas Eve set my spirits soaring. The next day was even more hectic. The telephone rang incessantly. One caller reported she had collected more than $100 for the children's Christmas, and the gifts would be ready for delivery to St. Nick by 3 o'clock that afternoon. Another caller wanted us to know she and her mother were providing a Christmas dinner for the family. At mid-morning, a friend bustled in with a stack of groceries and a gift for each child. "I'll be back later with more," she called as she dashed back into the gray chill. Suddenly, the print shop took on a festive glow. Bright against the window, our stockings were fat with evidence that more little elves had been busy. Besides the items I'd chosen, there was everything from warm pajamas and underwear for each youngster to crayons, coloring books, and games. The parents had been remembered too. Our last task was to wrap every gift. When the job was finished, the packages more than filled 2 laundry bags and 1 small bag. The Kellys would have Christmas after all. A bleak scene greeted our Santa at the Kelly home that night. Curtainless windows drew his eyes into where Mrs. Kelly sat alone with her children, mending, light from a bare overhead bulb detailing every care line in her face. The 3 older children scuffled on a worn old sofa. The youngest occupied himself with an empty box. On the floor, the 2 little girls pored over a well-thumbed mail-order catalog, pointing to one illustration, then another, their expressions wistful. Santa's knock riveted their eyes to the front door, where his head and shoulders were framed by a pane of glass. It could not be. Mrs. Kelly's amazement turned into joy as she ushered him into the room. "Children!" she exclaimed. Look who's here!" In the midst was a dream come true. The children stared in awe. Santa eased his heavy load to the floor. "Merry Christmas!" His booming voice broke the spell. "Santa Claus!" the little girls shouted, springing up from the floor to fling themselves at him. He knelt to receive them, arms outspread. Hug followed hug, kiss followed kiss. "You did come, Santa! You did come!" Wary at first, their little brother moved closer. He felt the softness of the red plush suit. One small arm crept around Santa's neck. Drawing him close, Santa looked up at Mrs. Kelly. Her eyes shone wet with tears. The big man cleared his throat, put the little boy gently to the floor, and stood up. "Now," he said, reaching for the gifts, "I need some help with these. Who's the oldest?" When Karen had given out the last package, laying aside her father's for his return from work, she went to her own gifts. Starting with the largest, she gasped when the wrappings fell away. "Look, Mama," she cried, holding up the brightly embroidered denims and a sweater. She drew the sweater to her shoulders. "Isn't it beautiful?" she asked her mother, dark eyes dancing. Mrs. Kelly nodded, speechless. Her tear-bright eyes went from Karen to her sons, in warm new stocking caps, to her little girls fussing over new dolls, and finally to Santa. Her voice was ragged. "How can I ever thank?" she began, then faltered. Who can I thank?" Who to thank? Or what? 6 Christmas stockings in a shop window had started it all. They looked quite ordinary, and yet, what mystical force had led me to hang them so late in the season? What unseen power had drawn the Kelly children to me, to the stockings in the window at the exact same moment? It was magic, of course, the special magic of Christmas.